For the Roman Empire in the 3rd century AD, the countdown to military crisis began with the rise of the Sassaniyans of Persia. The founder of the Sassaniyans was Ardashir, who, as the commandant of Dorobgerd, defeated various rivals in central Persis, a state within the Parthian Empire. Already an ambitious warlord, in 211 or 212 he declared himself the king of Istah, following the death of the previous king, his brother Shapur, and crushed a rebellion in Dorobgerd. Subsequently, the Parthian Empire had grown increasingly unstable, and in 213 a civil war broke out between the brothers Vologas VI and Artaban IV. Ardashir exploited the crisis to expand his kingdom, conquering Kerman, the coastline of Persis, and the region later known as Ardashir Kore. Artaban declared him an outlaw, but Ardashir responded by conquering Isfahan and Arjan, thereby securing control over the remaining 2 districts of Persis. He captured strong points from Nirafar, the king of Avaz, and he defeated and killed Bandu, the king of Masin. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Artaban led his armies against Ardashir, but he was defeated in 2 battles. In the 3rd and final battle, fought at Harmazgan in 224, Artaban was slain in the fighting. In this final clash, Ardashir was accompanied by his son Shapur, who would become a great warrior in his own right, and was described by the Romans as being of enormous bodily size. Despite the death of Artaban, many of the satraps of Iran still refused to submit to Ardashir, either seeking to carve out their own kingdoms or retaining loyalty to Vologas VI or the sons of Artaban. Ardashir defeated Madig, king of Media, Vologas in Upper Mesopotamia, and he conquered Zobdekana, Arzanin, and the kingdom of Albania. He seized Ctesiphon, killing Artabas's son Ersas, and had put an end to Arab raids, before proceeding to launch a grand campaign in the east. He subjugated Parthia itself, the satrapies of Gurgan, Abrahar, and Margiana, and the Indo-Parthian kingdom of Sakistan, and he received the submission of the Indo-Parthian kings of Turan and Makran. Ardashir then defeated the Kharazmians, forcing them to pay tribute, and he marched on Bakhria at the time of the Kushan Empire. His campaign caused the Kushan Empire to split in 2, with the Kushans of Bakhria becoming Sassanian vassals. Meanwhile, the weakened Parthian Arsacid dynasty continued to control the kingdom of Armenia, and thus Ardashir's attention turned to the west. He attempted to conquer Armenia, as well as the independent kingdom of Hatra. However, both efforts were unsuccessful, in particular the campaign into Armenia, where Rome sent volunteers to aid the Parthians. These were the early signs of tension between Ardashir and the Romans, who were weary of the new empire being forged to their east. However, Ardashir also planned to conquer the Roman territories of Upper Mesopotamia, as until the 2nd century, many of these lands were Parthian. War was to come. There is a growing consensus that modern life is more stressful than that of past generations due to changes in technology, family and relationship dynamics, heavier workloads, cost of living, and economic hardship, all of which can impact our well-being and mental health. And one of the best ways to address these difficult situations is professional counseling, which is why I'm pleased to welcome today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is an online platform that makes finding a therapist easier no matter where you are in the world. It's packed with features like groupinars, journal entries, live chat, and much more. The way BetterHelp aids you in finding the right therapist is by asking you various questions about your background, your spirituality, your relationship status, what are the reasons you are seeking therapy, and many more questions. And based on your answers, you will be matched with a professional and experienced therapist. Once you start your therapy, you will have different modes of communication available. It can be live chat, phone calls, and video calls. You can even message your therapist between sessions throughout the week. And this is where online therapy outshines the in-person model, because you can share your thoughts and feelings instantly without having to wait for your next appointment to discuss what's on your mind. Best yet, if it turns out that you're not making progress with your therapist, you can easily switch to a new one using their app at no additional cost. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, so if you're struggling or just facing a rough patch in life, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up using my link below or visit betterhelp.com/historymarsh. Thanks again to BetterHelp for supporting my channel. In 231, Ardashir captured Roman fortresses on the Tigris and Euphrates, and raided as far as Syria and Cappadocia. The Romans responded with panic. Their army in Mesopotamia killed its own commander, Heraclio, and mutinies and rebellions followed. In 232, Severus Alexander responded with a massive three-pronged offensive against the Persians. Alexander was to lead the main army to relieve the besieged fortress of Nisibis, while the northern army would invade Media via Armenia, and a southern army would advance down the Euphrates. However, although he relieved the siege of Nisibis, Alexander failed to advance quickly enough in support of the other armies. Ardashir detached a force to distract the northern army while he himself annihilated the southern army in Messene. The northern army, after being ordered to return west, suffered a costly winter march through the mountains of Armenia. The Persians had also sustained significant casualties, and so the war ended for the time being. But impressively, the Sassaniyah Empire had defended itself against a three-pronged invasion while still in its infancy. Alexander returned west to deal with barbarian incursions, where in 235 he was slain by his own soldiers, disdainful of his conduct. Meanwhile, Ardashir, ever energetic, crushed a religious revolt in Ardashir-Kure and launched a major campaign into Arabia. He defeated a coalition of East Arabian kings, with the king of Oman slain in battle. Sanatruk, the king of Bahran, hurled himself from the walls of a besieged fortress, and Ardashir succeeded in vassalizing Yamameh, Bahran, and Oman. Ardashir then reignited the war with Rome, now under the rule of Maximinus. He conquered much of Upper Mesopotamia, including Nisibis and Kare, and in 238 or 239, his forces began a new siege of Hatra. Situated atop a precipitous ridge and surrounded by desert and loyal tribes who regarded it as a cultic center, the city had resisted sieges by Trajan and Septimius Severus. But in 240, Ardashir raised his son Shapur to the position of co-regent, who took command of the siege. It was under Shapur's command that the most extensive siege works known to the Near East were undertaken. In the wake of the massive siege, Shapur sacked the city. Overnight, the famed city of Hatra withered into a ghost town, with the surrounding tribes driven out or exterminated. However, in 241, Ardashir died, prompting a series of rebellions against the still young Sasanian regime. A coalition of Gilans, Daylamites, and Gerganians received Khwarezmian assistance. But Shapur defeated the coalition in battle and proceeded to subjugate the rebellious provinces, including the mountain abodes of the warlike Daylamites. Unfortunately for him, Roman Emperor Gordian III simultaneously launched a major counteroffensive. His experienced Praetorian prefect, Timasitheus, began retaking Roman territories in Mesopotamia. In 242, Shapur rushed back to his western front. Caught on the back foot with an exhausted army, he was defeated at Resina. The Romans reconquered their territory as far as Singara. But fortunes changed yet again when Timasitheus died of dysentery. Reorganizing his forces, in 244, Gordian pressed ahead towards Ctesiphon, only to be defeated by Shapur in a pitched battle near Mysicae. The details of Gordian's fate are debated, but most likely he was mortally wounded in battle. With their emperor dead, the Roman army found itself trapped in foreign territory, and the new emperor Philippa had to negotiate with Shapur to secure the Roman army's escape. He paid a massive ransom of 500,000 gold coins, agreed to pay tribute to the Persians, and vowed not to intervene in Armenia. And for the time being, Shapur accepted the Roman reconquests as he shifted his focus east. In the late 240s, Shapur invaded the Kushan Empire, conquering the desert and mountain-filled lands of Arachosia, Sogdiana, and the Kabul Valley. Around the year 250, he marched back west. Relaunching the campaign into Armenia, he finally conquered the mountainous last kingdom of the Arsacids. In 251, Rome suffered a major defeat to Cniva's Gothic coalition at the Battle of Abritus. Shapur, perhaps aware of this disaster, accused the Romans of assisting the Armenians and in 252 re-invaded the empire. But this time, rather than focus on the fortresses of Upper Mesopotamia, Shapur marched up the Euphrates and deep into Syria, outflanking Rome's key Mesopotamian defenses. He wiped out a large Roman army, supposedly 60,000 men strong, at the Battle of Barbalissos. He then bypassed further strong points to make a surprise march on Antioch, the largest city in Rome's eastern provinces. Assisted by the exile Marid-Ha, he caught Antioch's inhabitants off guard while many were watching a theatrical production outside the city. He captured the citadel with a giant battering ram and proceeded to raid Syria and Cappadocia. He sacked 37 towns and cities by the end of 253, including Hierapolis, Beroia, Apamea, Larissa, Seleucia, Alexandretta, Dolichae, and Germanicaea, while a second force raided the Satala region from Armenia. In the panic, Uranius Antoninus, a priest in Emesa, led a successful defense of his city, after which he led a brief usurpation against Emperor Gallus. In contrast, Odaenathus, the commander of Palmyra's military, is said to have sought Shapur's friendship. Shapur demanded that Odaenathus prostrate himself, something the latter would not do. Rome was not able to respond to their new, formidable enemy. For Shapur, these battles and raids were intended to damage Roman manpower, gather plunder and prisoners, sap Roman morale, and build royal prestige. However, he did not intend to hold territory in Syria and Anatolia. Rather, he deported much of the population of Antioch to his new city of Gunda-Shapur, which was originally founded as Ware Antioch Shapur, literally meaning Shapur's better Antioch, and became one of his capitals. But in terms of conquest, the main western target remained Upper Mesopotamia. And after disrupting Rome's eastern defenses, Shapur captured the fortresses of Circesium, Dura Europus, and Apadana. Such was his dedication that he had his forces maintain a siege of Nisibis in the west, while he crushed a Kushan rebellion in the east. Although upon his return he succeeded in capturing Nisibis, the Romans recaptured Dura, and so in 256, Shapur again put the fortress to siege. As archaeology shows, the Persians and Romans built tunnels and counter-tunnels beneath the city walls, and Shapur used poisonous gas in the underground fighting. Shapur recaptured Dura, but this time it was abandoned by both sides. Despite Shapur's successes, the Roman network of fortifications proved difficult to overcome in the long term, as Roman garrisons could hide behind their walls and then combine forces with each other or with the Emperor Valerian to retake lost positions. In 259, Shapur again invaded northern Mesopotamia. He again captured Nisibis, but this time advanced as far as Carrhae, seizing the western stronghold with the aid of the giant battering ram. He then besieged nearby Edessa. This new offensive was answered by Valerian himself, who, after confronting Goths and Heruli in Anatolia, returned to the east with his main army. In the spring of 260, Valerian's army arrived in the area between Edessa and Carrhae, and near to the army of Shapur, who was still besieging Edessa. Shapur later wrote that Valerian had 70,000 men with him, drawn from the Rhine and Danube frontiers, as well as the eastern provinces. The strongest Roman arm was their infantry, and by the 3rd century, many were equipped with close combat spears to better deal with cavalry-heavy opponents. For the same reason, Rome now also employed units of cataphracts, heavily armored horse archers, excellent Moorish light cavalry, as well as Germanic and Sarmatian mercenary horsemen. The size of the Persian army is unknown, but the majority was made up of Sassanian cataphracts, including feudal Sassanian knights and prestige units, such as the Immortals and the Royal Guard, the Push-Taiban. By 260, these units must have been highly experienced under Shapur's command. The army also included high-quality horse archers, foot archers, and peasant light infantry, known as Paean, who were used to build and operate siege works. Shapur may have had a corps of elephants, which the Sassanians most often used as beasts of burden and as mobile archery platforms against enemy walls. In major battles, Sassanian kings could also employ the elephants as a rear guard. Shapur may have also used Dalamite mercenary infantry, whose martial qualities were praised by later Byzantine authors. Upon Valerian's arrival, Shapur repositioned much of his own army to deter a Roman attack on his position. The details of the coming engagement are shrouded in uncertainty, but Eastern Roman sources claim that Valerian's army had been hit by a plague, with the Moors most affected. As a result, the emperor was reluctant to offer battle. Shapur's numerous past victories were reason enough for caution. Indeed, Valerian had arrived with a large amount of gold, hoping to strike a deal with his opponent. Valerian sent envoys to Shapur with proposals in hand, but Shapur refused to negotiate. Worse for the Romans, Shapur now realized that Valerian wasn't confident, and he learned of the plague. Shapur wanted battle. His repositioned army presented an opportunity to the garrison, who launched a sally against their besiegers and forced part of the Paean infantry to retreat in disorder. This gave Valerian new hope. The specifics of what happened next are unclear, but Valerian, now more confident, appears to have marched his army through the plains between Edessa and Carrhae. These plains could favor the cavalry armies of the Persians, and indeed 3 centuries earlier, Crassus was famously defeated in this area in the Battle of Carrhae. Shapur's army subsequently broke camp. They likely left behind much of the Paean to maintain the siege while they prioritized their own speed, using riverbanks and ridges to conceal their approach. Peter the Patrician reports that Shapur followed close behind, waiting for the best moment to strike. That moment soon came, likely in part because the Romans were about to march through a particularly open stretch of land. Aurelius Victor reports that Valerian was surrounded by a trick, and Peter the Patrician claims that Shapur tricked Valerian with deceptions. Evidently, Shapur took the Romans by surprise, using part of his cavalry to intercept their line of march and cut off their retreat. Valerian now realized that he would have to fight a battle, and he drew up his forces. Like other Sasanian armies, Shapur will have placed his cavalry in several lines in the front, interspersed with archers, with other infantry deployed further back, and elephants possibly in the rear. As the Romans deployed for battle, Sasanian foot bowmen and horse archers advanced towards the enemy, firing volleys to soften the Roman formation. Persian horse archers harassed the Roman cavalry, attempting to bait them into breaking their lines. Shapur then gave the signal to charge to the first line of cataphracts. As these heavy horsemen thundered towards the Roman lines, they produced a thick cloud of dust, obscuring the vision of the Romans. The cataphracts smashed into the Roman infantry and cavalry, relying on their heavy armor to avoid taking serious casualties. Thrusting their heavy lances into the Roman legions, they disabled shields and tore through flesh. It soon became clear that Shapur planned to use his superior numbers of cavalry to encircle the Roman line. But rather than commit to a prolonged fight, this first line of cataphracts disengaged and withdrew through gaps between the cataphract units of the second line. However, before the Romans could catch their breaths, the second Sasanian line struck. Again, they stabbed their way through the mass of Romans with their lances. The Romans also inflicted casualties, especially the spearmen. However, in the open terrain, the cataphracts held the advantage. Again, avoiding a prolonged fight against massed infantry, the Sasanian heavy cavalry broke off the attack and rotated with other cataphracts, so that while cataphract units reorganized and recuperated, the Romans experienced an unending series of charges, all with the momentum of an initial attack. Through frustration, many Romans likely broke formation in their desperate attempts to pursue the enemy. This left them vulnerable to Sasanian counterattacks. Moreover, Shapur had by now surrounded the enemy on all sides, forcing them to bunch up. Panic took hold among the Romans, and many tried to flee. Breaking formation and with their backs to the enemy, the Romans were cut down en masse by the Persian cavalry. The terrible slaughter lasted until dusk. In the chaos, Valerian himself was captured, either during the battle itself or amidst the chaos of the rout afterwards. The capture of an emperor was an unprecedented disaster for the Romans. Their eastern army was decimated. Maintaining momentum, Shapur launched the most far-reaching raid of his career, ravaging Syria, Cilicia, Cappadocia, Pamphylia, and Lycaonia. He sacked Antioch for a second time, as well as other major cities, including Seleucia, Tarsus, Tyana, Iconium, Caesarea, and Sebastea. All told, 36 cities were sacked. Some of the Roman commanders fought back, Ballista defeating smaller raiding forces in Cilicia, and Odaenatus harassing the rear of Shapur's army as it departed Roman territory. But the damage was done. Shapur deported Roman citizens en masse to populate his new cities of Gundashapur and Bishapur. Prisoners of war were put to work on infrastructure projects. Emperor Valerian was humiliated by being put in charge of building a dam bridge at Shushtar, and he ultimately died in captivity. The capture of Valerian sent shockwaves through the empire. Valerian's son, Gallienus, now faced a collapse in loyalty to his dynasty. Usurpations broke out in Gaul, the Balkans, and the East. Worse for the Romans, Gallienus had to rely on Odaenathus to defend Syria and the eastern frontier, thus granting him much autonomy, which essentially turned Palmyra into a kingdom within the empire. Having won his greatest victory over the Romans, Shapur returned to his eastern frontier to finish off his other great enemy, the Kushans. He conquered Gandhara and captured the last king of the Kushans, Vasishka. However, Sasanian control in Upper Mesopotamia continued to be tenuous. Likely while Shapur campaigned on the subcontinent, Odaenathus retook Kare, Nisibis, and other fortresses. He even attempted to capture Ctesiphon, but a Sasanian army drawn from across the empire blocked Odaenathus's advance. By now, Shapur was an elderly man, campaigning less extensively and less often. In 271 he died, leaving behind a powerful empire that would endure for centuries. If you stayed around this far, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment as a sacrifice to the algorithm. You can also support us on Patreon and get ad-free early access to our videos for as little as $1, or by clicking the thanks button below to leave a one-time tip. As always, we'll see you in the next one.